So good day everyone. Today we're going to talk about the flowchart system of a manual expenditure cycle. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to print a copy of it, but I was able to draw it instead. So since our printer isn't working, I don't know why. So anyway, so when a company purchases or orders a inventory from the vendor or a goods from the vendors, the first thing to do is the purchasing department will have to uh, make a purchase requisition. So a purchase requisition is a document that is that has the delivery location and the date needed of it and the item names and the quantities of it. Once the purchase requisition is done, they will then proceed to prepare the purchase order. Once they have prepared the purchase order, there are 5 copies of it, 5 purchase orders of it. Since these copies will be then sent to the other departments. So the first purchase order that will be sent will be to the receiving department here, the PO blind copy. The second purchase order will be sent to the inventory control here, this. The third purchase order will be sent to the purchasing department here. The fourth purchase order will be sent to the accounts payable department, here, accounts payable department. And the fifth or last purchase order will be sent to the vendor here, PO. Now the vendor is the one who will decide whether to accept or decline the order. But if the vendor accepts the order, the goods will be then sent to the company along with the packing slip. Packing slip is a document that has a list names of the shipments. It includes the item names, SKU's number, the item weights, and the quantities of it. So letter A represents the the receiving department. And after a few days, the invoice will be then sent to the accounts payable department. Letter B represents the accounts payable department. Though there are also times that the vendor forwards the goods along with the packing slip and the invoice on the same day. Now, when the company has received the goods, the receiving department will then have to prepare the receiving report. So the purpose of the PO blind copy is to ensure that, or to force the receiving clerk to count and check the goods that has been received. And once that has been done, there will be 5 copies of the receiving report. So the receiving report will then be forwarded to the other department or distributed to the other department. The first receiving report will be given to the purchasing department. Once the purchasing department has received the receiving report, it will then be compared or reconciled with the files that the purchase department has. So once that has been done, the purchase requisition, purchase order, and purchase report will then be deemed as closed, meaning the transaction is already closed, it is already done. Once that is done, we will then look at the inventory control department. Now there is the purchase requisition and purchase order. These two will be then stored in the file, of course. And once that is done, the receiving department will send the receiving report to the inventory control. Once it is received, the inventory control department will then compare and reconcile it with the files that they have, which is the purchase requisition and purchase order. And once that is done, they will then update the records as well as the inventory ledger. Once that is done, the purchase requisition and purchase order and the receiving report will then be stored in the files. Once that is done, the inventory ledger and the summary will then be forwarded to the general ledger here. the letter D represents the general ledger. Once it is done, the purchase order and the packing slip of the receiving department will be then stored in the file. Now, in the accounts payable department, there is the purchase order and the receiving reports that has been received from the receiving department and the invoice that has been sent by the vendor to the accounts payable department. Now, it is important here that the receiving report here is present because it will be the one that verifies that there is a transaction or it will be the one that verifies that there is a order of a goods. Once these three are present, then we can now post liability. So we have to prepare the voucher register and the purchase journals. Also, we have to update the accounts payable subsidiary ledger. Once that is done, the purchase order, receiving reports, invoice, and the cash disbursement voucher will then be stored in the open accounts payable file. So as you can see here, there is a journal voucher here, right? In the accounts payable. So in the accounts, so this journal voucher will then be posted and reconciled along with the general ledger in the general ledger here. Once that is done, the summary and the journal voucher will then be stored in the file. So that is all. I hope it is clear, and thank you for listening to the flowchart system of a manual expenditure cycle.